Here you are, this immensely successful entrepreneur, creator of a extremely popular piece of software. You are going to tell these people about the virtues of hockey stick growth. You are going to unlock the secrets that will make these folks' businesses grow like a weed on steroids. Am I right?
Probably not. Probably not at all.
Why not?
Well, I'm more into...
Jason, why do you hate growth?
I kind of wish the conference was called Grow Slow Co. or Grow Co. Slow. I'm a little bit more a fan of slow growth.
We'll work on that for next year.
It wouldn't really fit in the circle you guys have. I don't think that would work. I'm a fan of slow, consistent growth. I feel like it's the healthiest way to grow, and whenever I see things shooting up, when I see hockey stick growth, I just get nervous about it. It doesn't make me feel, and same thing in the stock market, same thing in nature. Anything that grows really, really fast dies early usually. There's not a lot of support underneath it, and I just prefer the idea of a nice, slow, consistent growth. That's how I like to do things.
Talk a little bit about your recent decision to change the name of your company from 37 Signals to Basecamp, which is the product for which it's best known.
So we started the business 15 years ago, and about 10 years ago we launched this thing called Basecamp, which is a project management tool. Over the years we've been doing a lot of other things. We built a product called Highrise, we built a product called Backpack and Campfire, we wrote a few books. We've been doing a lot of things, but we kept our company relatively small. We're 42 people, so a relatively small company, and we've been doing a lot of things. And at a certain point I looked back at the things we were doing, and then I looked forward to the things we wanted to do. And my business partner and I had a nice heart-to-heart about this, and we're like, how are we going to do all these things well and do more things and keep the company relatively small? Because for us, keeping the company relatively small is an important part of who we are and what we believe in. We want to keep our culture tight. We want everyone to know each other's names. We want to keep it small. And small companies can do things big companies can't do. Everyone wants to get big, but the big guys wish they were a little bit smaller. So I kind of want to be small still. And so we looked at all these things we were doing, the things we've done, and we realized that we couldn't do them all at a high level of quality. We could do them, we were doing them, but we were diluted, and it was very difficult to execute at a high level on multiple things. It's hard to do one thing well, and we were trying to do 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 things well. We just couldn't do it with our team. So rather than continue to grow the company in terms of hiring a bunch of people, we decided to pull back and focus on one thing and do one thing really, really, really well. And I've always admired companies that can kind of stick to one thing relatively, we're not doing only one thing, but kind of one thing, and do that really, really well and understand it well and get to know it better and get to know our customers better on that one thing and just execute. And that's what we're doing. So we changed the name from 37 Signals to Basecamp to represent that we are serious about that move.
I would imagine that involved a certain amount of resistance. I would imagine that at least for some people within the organization, that type of statement, that type of mission would be difficult to swallow. Was it a tough sell?
It was tough when we were talking about, like, there's nostalgia. There's people, came to work for 37 Signals. They wanted to work for 37 Signals. So people were really attached to the name internally and attached to what the company stood for. But the company still stands for the same thing, and a name is just a name. And after I explained the vision for it and why we were doing it and why I thought it was important, a lot of people who were initially nervous about it really started to understand it. And the reality is that we've sort of been Basecamp for a while anyway. We just weren't official about it. And so by becoming official about it, it clarified the vision of the company, and everyone knew what they were working on now, and they knew why they were there. And so while there was some early resistance, I think, and some doubt, like, are we really going to stick to this? That's still the doubt that exists. And we've only been at it for a few months now, but there's doubt, like, are we really going to be able to stick with this? Because every week there's a new idea in the company, and how are we going to manage that? So there's some doubt, but I think, like anything, if you explain the vision and you're clear about it, people will come along with you if they believe in it, and for the most part, everyone's on board with that.
As you say, it is just a name. You call the company 37 Signals, you can call it Basecamp, you can call it Jason's company.
Haven't tried that one.
What difference does it make? And you're probably not going to like this example, but the example that comes to mind of a company that changed its name to the product for which it was best known was Research in Motion, which changed its name to BlackBerry because BlackBerry is what everybody knew. It's not exactly like that really saved the company. what difference does it make if you call yourself Basecamp? What are you accomplishing with that?
Yeah, well, Research in Motion was screwed, even if they're called Research in Motion, right? So it wasn't about the name. I mean, that was just there's a massive change that happened in the industry, and they were caught off guard, right? We could be caught off guard, and usually you don't know if you're caught off guard until it's too late. So that can absolutely be happening to us too. Every company is at risk of that. I think for us, this was not, the other thing is this is not a move to save the company. We've never been doing better. Our business is better than it's ever been. And I think that's the real interesting challenge. A lot of companies feel like companies typically pull back when they're having a hard time. I think a really good time to pull back is when things are going well. And you pull back a little bit. You don't have to pull back as much as we did, but paring things back a little bit, helping you focus and understand what you're all about, because the natural trajectory for things is to grow, keep adding new things, keep adding more people, and you do eventually start to dilute yourself. You forget what your company is all about. And if you have to do that, if you have to pull back defensively, you're probably going to make not great decisions. I like to be in a good position when I'm going to make decisions like that rather than be forced to make decisions. I think when you're forced to make decisions, it's much harder to get buy-in around the company. People are afraid. There's a lot of anxiety. I think when you're in a good spot, this is the right time to do it, and that's at least what we're trying to do.
Do you worry about complacency? Because for better or worse, if you are focusing your company on growth, at least you have to maintain a cutting edge. You have to come up with new ideas. You have to come up with new products. I think to take a possibly unfair example, you can imagine at some point Apple Computer saying, the Macintosh is a really, really good personal computer. The iMac is a fantastic iteration of that computer. Let's stop right here and not do anything else. If they had done that, would Apple have been a better company? Would Apple's customers be better off?
Apple, no. Apple probably did the right thing, absolutely. And the thing is we're not all Apple. I use Apple as an example all the time. A lot of people use Apple as an example all the time. But usually examples, when we talk about examples like that, we're looking at extreme outliers. And I think that there's a lot of room in the, from the bottom to the top to exist. And you don't have to be Apple. You don't have to be Amazon. You don't have to be these wild growing companies or Google. You can just be a really great company building something that's useful for your customers, treating them well, treating your employees well, making a great living, being very profitable. And you don't have to shoot for the stars all the time. This idea that everyone has to shoot for the stars all the time, I think, it's sort of a cruel joke on the entrepreneurial community, because a lot of people there's a lot of businesses that I run into that are really, really, really good $8 million businesses, but they feel like they have to be a $100 million business, and then they die. They kill themselves, right? When they could have been really happy at 8 million, or happy at 10 million, or happy at 20 million. But there's this moment where everyone's like, we got to go big, 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 big. And I'm just trying to push back on that a little bit. I understand. I want to continue to grow our company, but I don't want to chase dollars and profits at the expense of things that matter to me and my company. So culture is very important to us. The ability to do things for people that we couldn't do if we were significantly larger. Like every year we send every single one of our employees on a really great vacation, which we pay for. We pay for their vacation. If we had 200 people, that probably wouldn't be viable anymore. At 40, 50, 60, 70, we can do that. And I want to do that. That's important to me. That's way more important to me than an extra $2 million in the books. So those are the things that I really care about. And I think by deciding that we're not going to chase valuation or profits unless it's additive, instead of, I think a lot of people chase this stuff and it subtracts from their actual business. It helps them on their top line, but all the stuff in the middle doesn't do as well. The people aren't as happy. The product's muddled. The customers aren't treated as well. I don't want to do that. So I don't want to be Apple. I don't want to be Google. I don't want to be Amazon. I want to be Basecamp. I want to be a really solid, great, small company that has a huge influence. We've managed to influence a lot of people. We do really well. We generate significant profits. And that's fantastic, and I'm really happy with that. So, but I want to keep growing it, obviously, and I am, to get back to your first thing, I am terrified of complacency, and I feel like we've become complacent, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this shift and say, we need to focus on the thing that we're really damn good at, and let's do a really good job at that, because when you have a lot of things, you become complacent about more things. So I want to have fewer things to focus on and do a really good job on those.
Do you worry about complacency? Because for better or worse, if you are focusing your company on growth, at least you have to maintain a cutting edge. You have to come up with new ideas. You have to come up with new products. I think, to take a possibly unfair example, you can imagine at some point Apple Computer saying, you know, the Macintosh is a really, really good personal computer. The iMac is a fantastic iteration of that computer. Let's stop right here and not do anything else. If they had done that, would Apple have been a better company? Would Apple's customers be better off?
Apple, no. Apple probably did the right thing, absolutely. And the thing is we're not all Apple. I use Apple as an example all the time. A lot of people use Apple as an example all the time. But usually examples, when we talk about examples like that, we're looking at extreme outliers. And I think that there's a lot of room in the, from the bottom to the top to exist. And you don't have to be Apple. You don't have to be Amazon. You don't have to be these wild growing companies or Google. You can just be a really great company building something that's useful for your customers, treating them well, treating your employees well, making a great living, being very profitable. And you don't have to shoot for the stars all the time. This idea that everyone has to shoot for the stars all the time, I think, is it's sort of a cruel joke on the entrepreneurial community, because a lot of people there's a lot of businesses that I run into that are really, really, really good $8 million businesses, but they feel like they have to be a $100 million business, and then they die. They kill themselves, right? When they could have been really happy at 8 million, or happy at 10 million, or happy at 20 million. But there's this moment where everyone's like, we got to go big, 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 big. And I'm just trying to push back on that a little bit. I understand. I want to continue to grow our company, but I don't want to chase dollars and profits at the expense of things that matter to me and my company. So culture is very important to us. The ability to do things for people that we couldn't do if we were significantly larger. Like every year we send every single one of our employees on a really great vacation, which we pay for. We pay for their vacation. If we had 200 people, that probably wouldn't be viable anymore. At 40, 50, 60, 70, we can do that. And I want to do that. That's important to me. That's way more important to me than an extra $2 million in the books. So those are the things that I really care about. And I think by deciding that we're not going to chase valuation or profits unless it's additive, instead of, I think a lot of people chase this stuff and it subtracts from their actual business. It helps them on their top line, but all the stuff in the middle doesn't do as well. The people aren't as happy. The product's muddled. The customers aren't treated as well. I don't want to do that. So I don't want to be Apple. I don't want to be Google. I don't want to be Amazon. I want to be Basecamp. I want to be a really solid, great, small company that has a huge influence. We've managed to influence a lot of people. We do really well. We generate significant profits. And that's fantastic. And I'm really happy with that. But I want to keep growing it, obviously. And I am, to get back to your first thing, I am terrified of complacency. And I feel like we've become complacent. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this shift and say, we need to focus on the thing that we're really damn good at, and let's do a really good job at that. Because when you have a lot of things, you become complacent about more things. So I want to have fewer things to focus on and do a really good job on those.
Don't investors have a stake in growth? Isn't one of the critical drivers of a lot of companies' growth the fact that they need to pay back investors, and pay back investors with more than a reasonable rate of return?
Yeah, which is why I don't like investors. So we do have, just to be fair, we do have one investor. In 2006, we took some money from Jeff Bezos from Amazon, and that's the only investor we've ever had, and the only investor we ever want to have. And that was
if you're going to have one, that's pretty good.
That was a very, very special and unique circumstance and situation. we've never, so that was founders' money. That was some money off the table for me and my co-founder. Not a single penny's ever been, outside money's ever been spent on our business. All of our business, all of our revenues support all of our efforts. So customers pay for our business, employees or investors don't. And I think that's a fundamentally important thing, because when you take money from the outside, you're on a time clock. You've got to either sell, you've got to be acquired, you've got to go IPO, you got to raise another round. It's like crack, you know. People rarely just raise one round. It's like there's names for these multiple rounds. It's like addiction, and I don't like that. And I want to be on my own schedule. That's one of the beautiful things about being an entrepreneur to me, is that I own my own schedule. And I think that is the thing that people forget. When they take money from the outside, they don't own their own schedule. They're on someone else's time clock, on someone else's schedule. And growth is important in that case, because it's all about the end game. I don't think about the end game. I think about the now game. I think about being in business for as long as I possibly can. I'm not thinking about exiting. I want to stay in. That's what I want to do. When you take money, you're typically setting the stage to get out. And not always, but in many cases, at least in our industry, which is the tech industry, a lot of people are building things to sell them. I'm building things to keep them. And to continue to make things better. That's what I want to do. So that's why I'm not a big fan of the investors, but that's why I understand why investors want these returns and want growth, because they want to get out. And it's about multiples, and it's about math at that point, and it's not about product, it's not about customers, it's just about growth. And that, to me, is a perverted sense of what business is about. Business, to me, is about making something great, treating your employees great, treating customers great, adding something really good to the world that wasn't there before. And it's not about selling a company. And it's not about having a high valuation. It's not about those things. To me, it is that way to others, and that's fine. But to me, it's not. And so I don't want to play that game.
Well, I can imagine a person sitting in the audience saying, "Yeah, that's easy for you to say. You don't have investors. You've had this tremendously successful product. You have a stable business. But I, need to grow like hell. And I'm not even in the tech business. I'm in the patio furniture business, or whatever business is that they're in. What do you say to that person?"
Well, I understand that. But I also got to say that the vast majority of businesses in the world, probably 99%, don't have outside money, and there's a lot of great small private businesses that exist in the world to serve their customers, to make something useful, and they don't need to be obsessed. They're not obsessed with growth. They might have one retail location, they might have one store, and maybe they've been in business for 30 or 40 or 50 years. That's killer. That is an amazing accomplishment, and I think that that's fine. But again, if you want to grow and you want to get big, I totally, completely understand that. It's just not for me, that's all. If it happens because it happens naturally, then it's for me, but I'm not going to set out to grow. I want to set out to make something great and to build a great company. And one other thing I'll say about this is that I believe that every company itself is a product. So you have, your company is a product too. And so you have to improve your company over the long term. You have to make your company better, more efficient, more interesting, a better place to work, a better place for people to learn, a place where people can do the best work of their lives. And if the goal is to kill the product, which means to sell the company, like, that doesn't align with me. I want to keep making a great product, which is a great company.
So along these lines, you've recently launched a website called thedistance.com, which I recommend to everyone here. What is the goal of The Distance? What will people find there?
Well, here we go, talking about like all the things we're not going to do, and I just launched a new site. So
yeah,
this is a problem. I understand why people don't believe this. This is a little bit different, though. So The Distance is a new site that we launched. And it's focused on it's basically an online magazine, although there's only one article a month right now. And it's focused only on businesses that have been around for 25 years or more, that are privately owned. And to me, these are the real heroes of business. I have very little interest in reading about new startups. First of all, I love new ideas, but I think the real wisdom is with the old ideas. The people who have been around for a long, long time, the people who have stuck it out, people who have been in business for 25, 35, 45, 50 years. That is an amazing thing. So I want to tell those stories because those stories aren't typically told. The news cycle is run by new. It's all about new. Every paper you pick up, magazine you pick up, it's about new, which is totally fine. But I think there needs to be a voice for old, for things that have been working, people who've stuck it out for a long time.
So the first article to appear on The Distance, for those who haven't read it, is a profile of a tannery in Chicago that's been around for...
Since 1905.
Yeah, and the original product that they made is a leather strop that you sharpen straight razors on, and I can't think of a kind of better metaphor for old economy than that. Talk about a company that needed to expand its product line, and they did.
They did. And yeah, they're based in Chicago. They're right around the corner, actually, from my house. You can drive by it a million times and not even know it's there, yet they've been in business for over 100 years. What an accomplishment. To me, that is so much more special than someone who goes out and raises money 3 times and sells their company in 3 years. I don't care about those stories. Like, I get it, but I don't care about them because they don't have anything to teach me. If I can learn so much from someone who's been in business for 100 years, that is such an incredible accomplishment. The whole world is pushing against you. You know, there's resistance in the world. The world doesn't want you to be around for 100 years, yet this company has been around for 100 years.
The world stopped using straight razors.
Yeah, they did. Well, yeah. And so, you know, those stories are amazing to me. So we hired a journalist, a great journalist. She used to work at the Chicago Tribune, and she's writing these great stories about these great businesses that have been around for a long, long time that some people know about, most people don't. And I want to bring these stories to our audience, which is an audience that's typically focused on technology, typically focused on new businesses, new ideas, new founders, new rounds. Like, I want to go back to the old stuff and see what we can all learn from that. That to me is exciting. And you know, the fundamental reason why I think, by the way, this is exciting is because everyone talks about how hard it is to start a business, and many people in this room know that it's hard. But the harder thing is to stay in business. Technically, anyone can go start a business. You can put up a website, you can hang a shingle on the door, you can start anything tomorrow. You can just start something. The hard thing is to stay. The hard thing is to stay in business for 5 years, for 10 years, actually for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years, for 10 years. That's what's hard, and that's the real challenge that I'm trying to go through now. We've been in business for 15 years. Can we make it to 25? Can we make it to 35, 45? And if I want to go in that direction, I want to learn from those who have done that, and not just from those who are starting new stuff all the time, and then 3 years later they sell and they start something new. Just not for me.
And what are the lessons? So you look at these companies, you hired a journalist to look at these companies, to write the profile. I read the profile, and it's very moving, and it's very well done. But what are the takeaways? What can you focus on like 1 or 2 lessons that you learn from longevity, aside from, you know, focus on the long term, obviously, but
yeah.
What is it that's specific to these companies? What do they have in common that people like the people in this audience can learn from?
Yeah, what I've noticed so far, we've done 5 of these. We've only published 1, but we have 5 in the hopper. Going to do 1 every month. Is actually doing one thing really, really, really well. So Horween does leather really, really, really well, especially high-end leather. The next feature writing is on a shop out in the Chicago suburbs called Tina's Closet, and she's a bra fitter. So women come to her who can't find bras that fit, and for 37 or 38 years now, she's been fitting bras, and she's like this crazy bra woman who just loves, like, she's like, my way or the highway, you come in here, I tell you what fits, like crazy stuff that you would think is like terrible for business, but it's great for business because people go to her because she understands this stuff, and she understands the audience, she understands the product, and she does that, and that's pretty much all she does, right? There's this weird tiki bar outside of this in the suburbs of Chicago. We're doing Chicago to start because we're from there. But there's these businesses all over the world. And anyway, this tiki bar, like, it's this weird kitschy thing. And they've been in business for, I think, 40 years. Tiki bar outside, like, doesn't make any sense. But it does, because they are focused on that one thing. There's very few competitors in that tiki bar space. And
it's the tiki monopoly.
Yeah, they have a monopoly, basically. And they're nailing it. And it's a really fun experience and a fun place to be and a fun place to go. And they're not opening another themed bar for, you know, some other theme. That this is their thing. And I'm seeing this pattern that, like, these companies that stick around, they have a thing. Now, some companies have to totally change. So it also depends on the industry you're in and all these things. I mean, there's no universal truths here about any of this stuff. What I'm saying is one perspective, and what worked for them may not work for you, and what works for me may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for me, all this stuff, right? But my point is that there's a diversity of types of businesses out there, and there's a diversity of scale and a diversity of size. And and this idea that we all have to shoot for the moon and do change the. There's a lot of changing the world things going on. I don't think we have to change the world. Like, we don't all have to change the world. Some of us will change the world, but we don't all have to try to change the world. We can just make something really damn good that people like. And it can be really simple and basic, and if you nail it and you know it really well and you're absorbed in it, I think you can stick around for a long, long time. And that's what I'm seeing with these particular businesses.
I would be remiss as a journalist if I didn't take the opportunity to ask you, do you think we are in a tech bubble? We hear about this a lot. And well, do you think we're in a tech bubble?
I think we're in a valuation bubble. What that means, I don't know. I heard Mark talk about this yesterday, right? He doesn't think we're in a bubble because the previous bubble was about the public markets, and a lot of people got burned on the public side, and that's what really eroded a lot of value and took a lot of money away. We don't seem to have that right now. Although, if you look at the stock market and the S&P and the Dow, it's basically been straight up for a hell of a long time right now. So it doesn't. This is like, there's not a lot of support. There's just a lot of growth, and that makes me generally nervous. So I don't even think it's a tech bubble, or as much as it is this weird disconnect between what's actually happening and what the stock market's doing, and that makes me nervous. But look, I think some of these valuations are obscene, especially companies that don't make any money. I don't see how you can be worth billions of dollars if you don't make any money. It's like this whole thing with the tech world is weird because we look at companies that don't make any money and then we value them higher than those that do. That seems weird to me. I mean, would we do this with an airline?
As soon as they start to make money, the valuations go down because people say, "That's all you're making?"
That's all you can do. That's the limit. I mean, if we looked at a restaurant and every single diner that went there, the restaurant would lose money, we wouldn't consider that a successful restaurant. If every time someone got on a plane and bought a ticket, the airline lost money, we wouldn't consider that to be a successful airline, right? You can play this game all the way down the line, except when you get to the technology industry, it's like the more money you lose, the more money you could potentially make later, and you're worth billions of dollars. So that seems like a busted, disconnected thing. I don't know if it's going to affect the public, but something is going to give at some point. So I think there's something unhealthy going on, but I don't think it's the same kind of bubble that we had before, but there's something unhealthy going on for sure.
And do you think it is affecting the way that companies get funded? Do you think it's affecting the type of companies that are kind of coming to market now? And are there areas where you would encourage people to get into or encourage people to stay out of?
I think it absolutely has an impact on the kind of companies that are built today. People are finding these areas that are hot, they're raising a lot of money, and they're building companies specifically to get bought, specifically to be acquired. You see that happening a lot, and you can see it because you can tell they're not in it for the long term. You can tell they're building things on top of other platforms because they want that company to acquire them. There's a lot of that stuff going on, and a lot of investors are jumping on that bandwagon, and that, again, the customers get screwed in all these situations. This happens all the time in our industry, where there's a hot product, a lot of people like it, right? But the company has no way of making money, and so they know that their path is to be acquired. And then what ends up happening is the product is acquired, or the company is acquired, the product dies, the customers who are using it are screwed, and like a few founders get rich, and a few investors make a lot of money, but all the customers get screwed. Like, what the hell is that? That is not what business should be about. But that's what's happening. And I think that this frothy environment creates more of those scenarios. And that I don't like at all. And I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good. And it's not good for anybody, because once customers stop trusting software companies and when customers stop trusting new companies because they think they're going to get screwed, it's going to hurt everybody. And so I'm not a big fan of that idea. It feels very unnatural to me. It feels very pumped up in a bad way.
We have a question?
I like a lot of what you're saying, Jason, but just to be a little bit contrarian here, you could make the argument that, in fact, large companies have essentially outsourced their R&D. They aren't very good at it anymore. They recognize that real entrepreneurs are better at it, and it makes economic sense for them to be acquiring companies. So people who start companies and grow them to sell to a large company are serving an important function in the economy, no?
I think if that's your goal, yes. And and you're right. I mean, when companies get big, it's very hard for them to innovate, and they do acquire new technologies and new companies. So I think if that's what you're in it for, yes. But it's also like buying a lottery ticket. It's like this idea that you're going to build something and you only have one customer, which is this other company that might buy you, or this other 2 or 3 companies that might buy you. The odds are really stacked against you compared to just building a really nice company. I'm more interested in seeing diversity in the business world, not just the big conglomerates buying up all the small guys that are doing interesting things. Whenever I see a small company doing something really, really interesting, and they get bought, it just breaks my heart. Because it's like, these guys could have beat the old guys, could have beat the big old guys, but instead they decided not to. And so now the big old companies, which can't innovate, which don't really bring new things out, they're just buying these companies, and they're basically taking the people, and these ideas are typically going to die, and the customers get screwed. So I do think that that what you're saying is true. That a lot of small companies are where the innovation's happening, and big companies are buying these small guys because they can't innovate. But I think that if you want to be a company that's going to be bought, just be honest about it. That's the thing that bugs me, is that when small companies aren't honest about this, and they're like, we're customer focused, we love our customers, it's all about the customer, and then they sell the company in 3 years. Well, it's not about the customer if you sell your company in 3 years. It's not. And that's sort of what bugs me about it. So I don't have no problem with people being honest about what they're all about. It's just when they're manipulative in that way, that's what sort of gets to me. I think that's unfair to everybody.
I'm Neil. I own a digital signage software company called HyperSign, and I'm a long-time user of Basecamp and Highrise. Kind of sorry to see Highrise go, actually. So.
It's not going.
Okay, well,
yeah.
I love it. So
cool.
But I want to make a comment about something that Rework and some of the things you've done has taught me. And I'm sure there's a lot of people here that are software entrepreneurs, and we're so driven to put so many features inside of our product. And what I've learned over the last several years is that that's not necessarily what the customer wants anymore. We think that introduces value, but actually the simplicity and the increase of usability in our software is what increases the value. So that's what I've done. I want to thank you for that, because that's really what you taught me in Rework and in the different blogs and stuff like that. And my question is how did you come to that realization that this is really whether it was from the Apple-esque type of thing because they have a simple UI and things of that nature. How did you get to the point to say, listen, I don't want to pack software bloat into my product. I want to make it easy to use, because I know that ultimately is going to make me a lot more competitive than it would be to just slam everything in there. I'll go ahead and sit down while you answer.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I'm glad you like our stuff. Thank you very, very much for that. You know, it comes down to what kind of experience do I want as a customer also. I'm a customer. Of our own products and of other people's products, and whenever I use something that's bloated and confusing and complicated, it just bugs me. I don't want to add more of that to the world. I want to make things straightforward. I want to make things clear. I want to make things easier for people, because I don't want to be someone who is putting out complicated stuff in the world and confusing other people. So it just comes down to, like, what do you want for yourself? And I don't want complicated, confusing stuff. I have also realized over the years that the biggest market is actually at the low end. And this is something a lot of software companies miss. The biggest market is in low-end, somewhat generic kind of products that do a few things really, really well, but then stop there. Everyone thinks that to get more market share, you add more and more and more features. And that might work in the short term, but over time, what that ends up doing is creating a very complicated product that new people can't get into. And the thing is, there's always a new batch of freshmen every year. And if you make your product too hard for new people to get into, you're going to die with your customers when the customers that you have age and go away, or the companies get sold, or whatever happens. And then you've made this thing that's so complicated, that's designed only for the people who are paying you at one point, that new people can't come in. That's scary to me. So I don't want to create an environment or create a product that is so focused on the existing customers that I have that I'm turning away all my new customers. And that's what happens when you complicate products.
Hi, I'm Liza, and I've also enjoyed Rework.
Thank you.
And my question is about creating a habit. I have an online platform, and creating a habit outside of having a great product. So for the sake of argument, the product is great, and people come and use it. But even if it's your first time to Facebook or your first time to Pinterest, you have to be reminded that it's there to go back to it. And then all of a sudden we become in the habit of going to these things because they are a good product. So Can you speak to creating a habit to keeping people reminded to come back so then it becomes part of their daily life?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know how to do it other than to make something really valuable, because I think that, and it's a kind of a cheap answer, to be honest, because I'm not what does that mean? It's different for every business, but I think if you have to be artificial about things, with gamification to me is artificial, and growth hacking stuff, like all these things are artificial. And they're basically beating around the bush, and they're saying, like, our product is not valuable enough, so we have to trick people into coming back. We have to game people into coming back. We have to bait people to come back. I think you just got to make something that people want to use, that's useful to them, and really understand why they're hiring your product. What are they struggling with right now? This is the big thing that I've come to realize, is that people buy something because they're struggling with something else. So what are they struggling with? And can you remove that struggle? And when you remove that struggle, if it's important to them, they're going to keep coming back and back and back because this thing actually helped them. I think what happens is a lot of products exist because they're fun, which is cool, fine, but then, like, fun wears off, cool wears off, useful never wears off. When something is useful to you, and it helps you get something done, or helps you make forward progress on something, or helps you with a team, or whatever it is, like, if it's useful, you keep coming back to use it. That's why I like the word useful, because you use it. You don't cool it. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
If something's cool, it's cool, but there's fads that come and go, and it's very difficult. So I think you got to learn. You got to get to the root of what someone finds valuable and useful about your thing, and focus on improving that. And that, to me, is the only real natural way to get people to keep coming back, rather than baiting people with other things.
I agree with you about gamification.
It's hard, by the way.
Yeah, I agree with you about gamification. I kind of get very turned off by that. Yeah. So I feel like even though if you have a good product, someone might find it very useful, and they might even go away, and all of a sudden 2 months later someone mentions it again. They're like, oh, I forgot, that was great. So I guess a sub-question is, like, is there a simple way to keep just a genuine way through email or social media to just touch your customers?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can send, all the stuff. You have to do it in moderation, because if you blast people with too many emails, they get annoyed. If you don't reach out to them enough, and we struggle with this all the time. We're more on the side of rarely contact rather than over contact, but I think we don't do it enough. So I think it's about being polite and kind, and reaching out to people. And again, when you reach out to them, give them something worth something. Don't just remind them of your product, but teach them something, show them something they didn't know before, show them how they can maybe use the thing that you have, and give them something and teach them something rather than just tell them something. Because telling them something, if we're taught, we appreciate the teacher. If we're told, it's easy not to care so much about that thing and forget about it. So I think it's about helping people out when you can with information that's valuable to them, and then they're going to see you as a reliable source of something that's useful, and they're going to pay more attention and keep coming back, I think. And by the way, this is hard. All this stuff is hard to do, and I do not have all the answers for any of these things. But I think fundamentally you got to get to the value, understand what's useful, and build around that.
Thank you.
Sure.